Welcome back, everyone. Time to do a first comparison in a long time. I haven't done a phone comparison in a while. And we're going to be looking at the newly released, both these phones are pretty new. The iPhone SE2, which is, I guess, the older one out of the two, but the new, very, very new Google Pixel 4a. Now, Google did send this out to me. I'm going to be completely honest. Now, Google did send this out to me, thankfully, but the opinions are the same. There's a chance I might say the iPhone SE2 is better. I don't know at this point, but we're going to find out together. Now, honestly, the very first thing that comes to mind is the price tag. Right now, the SE2 is selling brand new for $400. The Pixel 4a is selling for about $350 as far as I know, as far as I've seen. There is no 4a XL, so these two are basically what you're getting at the price. Now, the SE2, I think is great. I don't think there's really too much to hate on it at all. But when you do look at them side by side and kind of at the front, you can kind of tell there are some pretty big differences between the two. Now, when I put them side by side, you can see that the Pixel 4a is noticeably bigger, but also it has the bigger screen, and it honestly just looks nicer from the front. I mean, you can't deny it. The Pixel 4a looks far superior than the iPhone SE2. Is it a big deal? Honestly, it totally depends on you. You know what I mean? For me personally, I would kind of prefer a phone that would look like the Pixel 4a. However, the 4a is not perfect, and really every single other area, the iPhone SE2 is kind of better if I'm being honest. Even though the front looks better on the Pixel 4a, the phone feels better on the SE2. I mean, the SE2 feels like a flagship phone. It literally, you got aluminum on the sides, you have the glass on the back. The Pixel 4a, you don't really have that. You have the nice looking front for sure. I mean, it looks like the S10 series. But when you flip it to the back, I mean, you have plastic pretty much everywhere on this device. So is it a big deal? Kind of. I mean, it totally depends up to you. I would personally probably feel more comfortable owning a phone like this. With a phone like this, it doesn't feel like the most premium phone in the world. Is the big deal? Like I said, it's going to be totally up to you. But that is probably one of the bigger differences that I've seen in terms of the outside. When I feel both in the hand, one really doesn't feel too much bigger than the other, if I'm being honest. Like I said, side by side, that's kind of what you're getting. You're getting a 5.8 1-inch panel on the Pixel 4a. It is an AMOLED screen, which is really, really nice. For that price tag, that is pretty impressive. The Pixel 3a also had an AMOLED display last year, and that one was really good. It's actually OLED, but I just say AMOLED, I'm so used to it. It's 1080p, and honestly, it's a really good looking panel for the most part. And the viewing angles are actually pretty surprising. I don't know if anybody else is going to say that, because I don't know if anybody else agrees with me. Maybe they say it's bad. But when I'm looking at this, as long as I'm not comparing it to some other phone, it really doesn't look bad. Like, I'm looking at it like an angle, and it really does look pretty good. You have very little bezel around the whole entire display, hole punch display at that, which is really, really cool. And at this price tag, that is extremely impressive. Now, it's something like the iPhone SE2, where we have a 4.7-inch panel. Like I said, we're pretty much used to this type of screen. We're used to having this type of body. You have big bezels on the top and bottom, and like I said, compared to something like the Pixel 4a, that's a pretty impressive thing that the 4a was able to do. That the SE2, I feel like Apple could have done a little bit better of a job, but they were trying to hit that price tag and trying to stay at that more premium, side of things, so I guess that's okay. The screen feels really good though. I mean, it doesn't really look like a bad screen at all. It's just, we're just kind of so used to seeing a panel like this. Like, they could have done a little bit better, but it is what it is. You have the front facing camera, home button up top, and as long as you're okay with it and as long as you're comfortable with it, I guess that's cool. But definitely when it comes down to the front of things, the iPhone SE2 looks good, but the Pixel 4a definitely looks far superior. This looks way more modern. This looks, way older. In terms of the thickness, you can see that the SE2 is actually thinner than the Pixel 4a, which is really, really good. Just by a little bit though, and I think definitely by the camera module you can kind of tell. But in terms of everything else, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, but the 4A, I believe, is a little bit thicker, which is totally okay. As you can see, my SIM card slot is kind of sticking out of the 4A. Oh, that's the actually volume button. What the heck? And then on the back as well, you can tell, I mean, the single camera setups on both, but definitely the glass on the back of the SE2 feels much, much better than the plastic on the back of the Pixel 4a. So in terms of the outside, that really pretty much covers it up for the most part. I'll go and hit on the software right now. So both are on their basically latest versions of supported official firmware. The iPhone SE2 is running iOS 13. The Pixel 4a is running Android 10. Now both of these are going to be lasting for quite a bit of time. The 4a should be getting Android 11, 12, and then 13, I think, where the iPhone SE2 is probably going to be outlasting the Pixel 4a. It's really hard to tell at which version of iOS this is going to end at. If I had to say it, I'd probably say like iOS 18 or something like that. I have no idea. Whenever the 11 Pros die, that's basically when this one's going to go. But in terms of the software, both of these phones, fortunately, are going to be lasting for a very long time because, both of these suppliers on Google on this side and, iOS on this side, they support these Pixel phones like crazy, which is a huge thing, and I always love seeing that. So whenever a phone manufacturer is able to keep supporting their phones, I love that more than anything, and we have that capability here on both of these devices. So even though iOS, this phone is probably going to outlast this one, you're still going to be getting a pretty good lifespan on both these phones, which is really cool. Now, with all that being said, let me go ahead and do a little bit of a speed comparison between them. It's not going to be an end-all be-all. I'll do a whole separate one probably in a different video, but I'll do a quick one to kind of make you guys feel better. The iPhone SE2 has that Apple A13 Bionic chip, Hex-core CPU, and 3 gigs of RAM on all the models, where the Pixel 4a has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 730 chipset, octa-core CPU, an Adreno 618 GPU, and 6 gigs of RAM on the one model that it supports with. So let's go and do a little bit of a speed comparison and see which one is the faster one. Okay, now we got all the apps cleared out in the background. Let me go ahead and clear these out. Okay, there we go. So I have a couple of these apps supported or downloaded, so I'll go ahead and run through these real quick. You can do Facebook, 3, 2, 1. iPhone SE2 is faster, it seems like, followed by the Pixel 4a a little bit after. Twitter, 3, 2, 1. I thought the 4a was going to be faster, but the SE2 actually ended up being faster there, so I guess that's good. Snake vs. Blocks, 3, 2, 1. And a little bit of a pop-up here, but I don't think that'll fix anything. Actually, the Pixel 4a was a little bit faster there. The SE2 was a little bit behind. Let's go and get into some gameplay and see if one is noticeably faster. And actually, I don't know. I kind of thought the SE2 kind of stuttered a little bit there. Maybe I'm tripping, but yeah, both were pretty fast there for sure. Netflix, 3, 2, 1. And definitely the SE2 was faster there, followed by the Pixel 4a a little bit after. Not a crazy thing, but definitely a little bit noticeable. Quizlet, 3, 2, 1. And the SE2, I think, was a little bit faster there. The 4a was right behind it. We can do Temple Run 2, 3, 2, 1. And I always get these random pop-ups, so I always have to be near the device. And I'll give this phone a little bit of a leeway because of that pop-up, probably maybe half a second. And even then, you can tell that the SE2 still would have been ahead for sure. The 4a right behind it, And you have to keep in mind that this one has the latest chipset of the phone. The 4a does not. The 4a has an older chipset inside of it, or the older Snapdragon. I don't remember what it is, but that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind, that this thing, even though it has the latest chipset, the 4a is definitely behind it for sure. So the 4a, let me test one more app real quick. I can do Instagram, 3, 2, 1. I don't really have too many apps downloaded on here. As you can see, the SE2 is still faster. Thank you, 3, 2, 1. And 4a was faster here. I think it was the second time the 4a was faster. Now, I will tell you, between both, the SE2 is definitely the faster device, just even from the small test that I did. You're probably going to get a faster device on the SE2 and probably a more powerful device, even though the RAM is more on the Pixel 4a. I still feel like the SE2 might be the faster one, you know what I mean? Specs on paper would mean one thing, but in real life use, like I just showed you, potentially the SE2 might be the faster one. But the 4a, I think, is still pretty fast for the most part, especially for that price tag. I think it's a pretty good performing phone. But again, between these two, keep in mind the SE2, I think, is the faster one for sure. But I'll do a full separate speed test if you guys want to see it. Now, I'll quickly hit on the cameras as well. Both of them actually have single camera setups and 12 megapixel camera setups at that. You have a 12.2 megapixel camera on the 4a and a 12 megapixel camera on the SE2. Both can do 4K at 30. You cannot do 4K at 60 on the 4a, but you can do 4K at 60 on the SE2, which I think is really cool. That's a huge highlight. At a phone of this caliber, having that type of camera is really nice, and the software inside of this phone is really cool as well. And honestly, from what I tested, it seems to me that the SE2 might be the better camera for sure. I think the 4a does a pretty decent job. The software, good enough for the most part. But so far, what I was testing, I think the SE2 might actually be the faster camera. So I'll do a full separate camera comparison if you guys want to see it. But as far as I could tell, I think the SE2 actually has the better camera. On the front, 7 megapixel sensor on the SE2 and 8 megapixel sensor on the 4a. And again, I still think that probably the SE2 has a better camera setup. So in terms of the cameras, that pretty much covers it. Now I'll go ahead and hit on the battery life as well. Now, the SE2 has a 1,821 mAh battery. The Pixel 4a has a 3140 milliamp hour battery. Now between both, I would probably say that the Pixel 4a has the better battery life, and this is because of two things. One, you have a way smaller battery on the SE2, but two, you have a little bit of a slower processor on the Pixel 4a, and because of that, that actually does aid in the fact of it, maintaining some of that battery life throughout time. So even though the 4a, isn't the best phone in any caliber, even in the battery life, it's still better in battery life than the iPhone SE2. So I think that's a pretty, notable feature right there. But you do have wireless charging on the SE2 where you don't have wireless charging on the 4a. So that's another big thing to keep in mind as well. So to answer the question, which one should you pick up? Should you pick up the 4a? Should you pick up the SE2? In my opinion, if I were you, I would, I don't know, this one's tough. If I was immersed in the iOS ecosystem, I would probably pick up an SE2. Like if I'm in the predicament that I am now, I would probably pick up an iPhone SE2 because I like Apple products. I have MacBooks, I have all these things, and it's just so seamless to kind of combine all those things. But I feel like in a way, and I don't know if this is true, but for me personally, after testing these things, after owning the 4A for like a day, I feel like you're getting more of a value from the 4A. You know what I mean? You're getting a better value. It's not a bad phone by any means. It just so happens that the SE2 is just faster. But really everything other than the camera, that Pixel 4a kind of beats it. You know what I mean? It's a better looking screen. You're getting a more modern looking phone, and the software is great on this phone. Your software life cycle is good. It's going to be lasting for a very long time as well. There's really nothing to hate on this, and it's $50 cheaper than the SE2 as well. So, like I said, I don't think one really blows the other one out of the water, but I feel like both have their strong suits. Basically, where the SE2 kind of lacks in, the 4a kind of wins that in terms of the design. You got the headphone jack on this phone. You have kind of a better battery life. You have, a couple other things too that I forgot to mention. And everything that the 4a lacks in, the SE2 has it. The better build quality, the better cameras, wireless charging, things like that, IP certification. So it's kind of funny, but in my opinion, that's kind of where I stand at. I think one doesn't really blow the other one out of the water, and they both have their strong suits for sure. So that really pretty much covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that means so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.